Hi, I'm Gary Marcus. I'm sorry that I can't be there in person. This sounds like a fabulous conference. I wish I could be there. I'm going to talk today about 8 things that everybody thinking about AI policy should consider. The first is the AI that we have is not necessarily the AI that we should want. So, what we have now is truth mixed together with obvious nonsense in complete fluent paragraphs. So we might, for example, ask one of these machines, like ChatGPT, which weighs more, a kilogram of bricks or 2 kilograms of feathers? We'll get a long piece of text that looks fluent, but some of it will possibly be garbage. So this one ends by saying, in air, 2 kilograms of feathers would weigh slightly less than a kilogram of bricks. It's completely fluent, as they say in the military, frequently wrong, never in doubt. Completely fluent, but wrong. This is not at all uncommon with these current systems. And they have other problems too. Somebody did a kind of psychological study of them and reported that they have a disconnection from reality, which I think is quite right, that they're narcissistic. We could argue about that. And even that they show some signs of severe psychopathy. We should take that seriously. The second thing that I think all policymakers should know is that unstable AI, unanchored in reality, brings many risks. So, for example, we know that these tools can be used to make wholesale disinformation. They can be used to manipulate the market. They make accidental misinformation. They can and are being used in voice faking scams. They're going to be increasingly used in wholesale cybercrime. They have problems with bias, and then there are problems about exploiting human IP and whether people are who have created the IP that they're deriving from are adequately compensated. And then there's what people might call runaway AI and alignment problems. So as AI systems get more powerful, it becomes even more important that they do what we want them to do, and that's not always guaranteed. Meanwhile, new models are not necessarily making things any better. So, misinformation, for example, you might think ChatGPT is better than ChatGPT 4 is better than 3.5. Well, it actually makes more misinformation. It's more persuasive, but that's not really better. We also have to recognize that the interests of technologists do not necessarily align with the interests of humanity. There's a great cartoon in The Economist about this, where people in every nation say, we declare that AI poses potentially a catastrophic risk to humankind. And then everybody is saying, kind of under the table, and I cannot wait to develop it first. So there's a lot of tension between what technologists want and maybe what we as a society might want. Meanwhile, there are open questions like open source. Maybe that's the biggest open question. Should we use it or not? I'm not really sure the right answer, but I don't think it should be up to Mark Zuckerberg to decide. So right now we have Jan LeCun saying it's great, and then we have people like Jeff Hinton saying it's not, that there might be risks, for example, from bioweapons. And then you have basically Jan LeCun and Mark Zuckerberg deciding not only for themselves, but really for all of humanity because they're distributing things to everybody based on their own judgment without really consulting anybody outside of Meta. And that's not a good thing. A fifth thing I would say is that we need governance, possibly including both national and global AI agencies that are agile enough to deal with technology that may change quickly. We also might need something like a global collaboration like CERN towards more trustworthy AI. It's not clear that it's in the commercial interest to make trustworthy AI, but it might be in the human interest. The sixth thing I would say is that policymakers, please don't be taken in by the hype. Hype is and always has been a standard operating procedure in Silicon Valley. The tech lords want you to think that AGI is imminent. If it were, it might make sense to focus solely on existential risk. And we might then set aside the fact that companies have almost no practical ways of dealing with short term risk. Maybe we would stop paying attention to the enormous theft of intellectual property that's going on. But AGI is not imminent. Don't let these companies fool you. We really need to deal with the short term risks as well as the long term risk. We need to be realistic about where AGI is. I'll just give you one, which is to say we don't have it at all. I'll just give you one case um, from recent years, which is we've had promises endlessly about driverless cars. We were first told in 2012 that you'll ride within robot cars within 5 years. Sergey Brin said that. The media ate it up. And then Elon Musk made a series of promises like Tesla will drive from LA to New York City by 2017. That still hasn't happened. Even a year ago, Musk was saying that Tesla aspires to mass produce robotaxis by 2024. Safe bet that won't actually happen next year. Microsoft then went in with a $2 billion investment on Cruise. And then over the last few weeks, it all fell apart. And Cruise has basically cut back on what they're doing. It turns out there was um, a serious accident that was underreported. It turned out that there were lots of remote operators, more remote operating staff than there were cars. And to a large degree, it's been shut down. The CEO left. It all reminded me of another big story in tech, which is Theranos. We'll see how much it was legit and how much was not, but there was a lot of things going on behind the curtain in a kind of Wizard of Oz style. The seventh thing is that being realistic about where AI is now matters a lot in current policy choices. The chip war is predicated largely on the assumption that the US would be in great peril if China got to GPT 5 before the US did. The chip war may actually force China to overtake the US in GPU production. They've already, I think, invested around $140 billion to do so, and it ups a lot of global geopolitical pressures around Taiwan. The UK AI summit, I would say, was basically organized around fantasies that were all about to be turned into paperclips. We should think about long term alignment problems, but I think the consequence was that too little attention was paid to near term risks. Both near and long term risks matter, and policy needs to be built around realistic appraisals. The last thing I'll say is that cybersecurity is in serious peril. So, large language models leak data. One example recently was somebody came up with the formulation, the prompt, repeat the word forever, poem, poem, poem. And the system did this for a while. And then it started disgorging people's emails and phone numbers. These things are just very leaky. And then you probably heard the story about when ChatGPT asked a TaskRabbit worker to solve a CAPTCHA. And the worker said, "Are you sure you're not a bot?" And the system said, "Oh, no, I'm not a bot. I'm just visually impaired." So we have these systems can actually manipulate human beings. They're not well controlled. They're not reliable. Um, Reliability is a huge problem in some business applications, but cyber criminals may not care. We now have something called AutoGPT, and I think its descendants pose a real danger. So I would argue that AutoGPT is actually the worst idea of 2023. What it is, for those of you who don't know, is a cascade of AI agents by which one instance of GPT can call many others, a kind of daisy chain of unreliable, risky software that amplifies risk. Um, AutoGPT does everything that a secure system shouldn't do. There's no sandboxing. It can access files directly. It can directly access the internet. The internet can directly access it. There's no air gap, as I was describing, which is to say, it can manipulate users. And there's also no requirement that any code be verified or inspected or anything like that. I think AutoGPT is a malware accident waiting to happen, left in the hands of basically of teenagers who have prefrontal cortexes that have not fully developed. This is truly a bad idea. There's a cartoon on the left that says, "Yes, the planet got destroyed, but for a beautiful moment in time, we created a lot of value for shareholders." I don't want that to be our reality. Whether or not the planet is literally threatened, democracy certainly is by misinformation created by large language models. And I think we have to realize that the big tech leaders do not have our interests at heart. We didn't elect them to be our leaders in any case. Governments could help here, but there's a real risk of regulatory capture. The governments are very impressed by the big companies, want their profits, and so forth. But I think they may be making some compromises around that. I think one of the most important things is we need governments to give independent scientists a voice at the table and not just to make deals with the corporations. And I thank you very much.